Good morning, my friends. It's Roger, Mud Fossil University. Today I got a video sent to me from my very good friend Jody, and she said, look what they see on the other side of the moon and what they have to say about the moon. And as I started to watch this, I said, I have to do a video, because right away he starts talking about how the scientists say, well, we know this because of this type of rock. Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. They have no clue about the rocks. And I'm going to show you something, not to show you porn, but to show you a reason why I say that. Alright, right here, I can show you they have no clue about this. This was mud fossil, wet, soft flesh tissues right after the Great Flood. And they were like marshmallows. And they, giants or whoever it was, put their hands in there and caused those patterns. Now, let me show you why I say, that's first of all, that's one bit of evidence, but let me show you what rocks truly are, because every one of them was originally a creature's body. All right, we were just on Mud Fossil University on Facebook. This is the other group I have, Mud Fossil Research. That was a living creature, and it was petrified by a gorgon. That is the tissue of tendon. And I'll show you the legs. You can't make any mistake. You cannot miss that. Totally 100% organic. The blood, the tissue, the anatomy, 100%. Now, you should come up here and look at this now. And I want to show you something. See, maybe I can do them now. I keep going here to add these people. It says, do you want to add them? I say, yeah, approve them all. Watch what happens. You're about to approve 11 members. Confirm. See, you can't do it. And then they go away or something, I think. I don't know what the hell's going on with this thing. Anyway, and also, again, I just want to let you know, I don't take any new friends for years, and I'm sorry about that. I really am. But I can't. Every time I did, I got all kinds of things happen to me. I just can't take the chance. I'm very, very sorry. Now, this is mud fossils, all right? You ask a geologist, and even now, with every bit of evidence that I have presented, and then they just run away. Well, that, my friend, is a vagina. I don't care what you say. That is a vagina, and if you see that little tiny split that runs right up the entire thing, that is the formation of the seam in the abdominal wall, and I'll show you that. And it's all in this. All right, there it is right there. There's a ball that forms called a blastula, and then it caves in like this, and then it finally sets up this wall like this, and then it pinches together and seams here, and that is what splits, and that runs your entire cavity, because that's your abdominal cavity now, and that's what cracks, and you see them in every single one. You can see it right there. That's a giant vagina. That's a guy standing out there. This is no little puppy stuff. There's another one right there. And this is the walls of the vagina. It's exactly correct. There is no possibility that this is wrong. None whatsoever. All right? And they're everywhere. That's the walls of the vagina. And there's some of them, like that, are fairly good size. These are actually individual people standing on the walls of that vagina. And that right there, my friend, that is where that seam is. It's covered by a mat. This one didn't split like the other ones as much, but you can really see where it was. It's not hard to see. And this is the fallopian tubes. They call it the tobacco leaves. These are fallopian tubes. You see this little feathery thing sticking off. I'm telling you, this is what it is. That down here, I forget what the name of the caverns is. It's just a gigantic, uterus. The vagina, the suver, everything's there. So anyway, now let's go back to the moon and see what they have up there. Okay, back to the video. Now this is what they discovered on the other side of the moon, and what they think about the moon in general. They're starting right from the wrong place every single time, because they rely on things that were wrong. Now just listen.
Science and technology in China, And it's a research that also connects to what's happening on the moon, on the far side of the moon, where China currently has an explorer known as Chang'e 4 that for the past few months has been exploring and trying to investigate various rocks on the moon. Now, what it discovered is that, well, as we suspected, the moon has experienced a very large impact in its history, because it discovered these rocks that are known as magma rocks that came from within the moon, and the only explanation here is that, well, it's probably something that collided into the moon and then released these rocks from within the moon, landing them on the surface.
That is possible. I would like to see these magma rocks because from what I have seen, not one single rock other than lava, which they can see coming out of a hole in the ground, boiling out of there, then I think that usually they get that right. But every other one is wrong. Igneous, metamorphic, tectonite, ultramafic, all these different things. It's just they're all body parts.
And that's kind of what we've discovered. But what exactly was it that collided with the moon? And this is what this research tries to answer. But before we answer this question...
Now, this is where I want you to start thinking about as he continues talking. I don't care what they think about collided with the moon, because I don't think that's accurate whatsoever. However, what they are going to show is the moon, and the two sides are completely different. Now, I want you to think on your own why that would be.
Now let's take a look at the moon's surface here and compare the two sides. So this is the side that we see. This is known as the near side of the moon. And as you can see, it has a lot of...
it's black and flat.
Usual dark patches, and also, by the way, these are called Maria, and also a lot of areas that don't have a lot of impact here. This is because once upon a time this was all molten lava.
No.
And you look at the other side, and it's all filled with craters. A lot of craters.
You see that? 100% different. Why? Now he's going to say, oh, this is a gigantic crater happened here, and then a bunch of little craters happened in it. Well, it might be. But I don't think I see that. Maybe you do. Let's think of what you see when you see this. Now, remember, one side is flat and smooth almost, which is facing towards us. And that side of the moon continuously faces towards us. It doesn't rotate around in circles like all the other planets in us. It just sits there in that geosynchronous orbit around us, facing us continuously. So this is the side that we never see. The Chinese have well, I'll listen to what he says.
And it looks almost entirely like a completely different object altogether. There's also a very large crater right here. And so, because of all of this, we've always assumed that something must have collided with the moon and changed its surface. And the other really interesting thing about the moon is that back in 2012, NASA had a really interesting mission known as GRAIL that studied the unusual gravitational anomalies on the surface of the moon, to basically try to explain why is it that the moon's actual gravitational shape, or technically speaking the actual gravity well, is very bumpy. It's not really spherical as on Earth.
All right, I can explain that as well. It's not spinning. The Earth is spinning, and it has magnetic stripes in the Earth's surface. There's magnetic stripes. Look it up. And those spin. They are there's no difference than the wires in an electric motor spinning around in a soup of electrons, which is usually magnets in a magnetic field. And it spins in there, and the spinning pushing against those electrons on those wires creates a magnetic field. This is not spinning. Obviously, it's not going to have the same field. And of course, they don't understand why our magnetic field is set up. They think there's an iron core in there and somehow it creates a magnetic field. Absolutely not. It's the spinning motion of the Earth set up with the magnetic stripes as a motor or generator. And in this case, it's a generator. It spins. We know that. 1,000 miles an hour through this magnetic soup. We know that. We know it's a soup of magnetism and electrons around the Earth. That is not in question. So that is a motor or a generator. A motor means you send the electricity into it and it turns it. A generator means you turn it and it creates electricity back out. We are a generator.
In other words, if you were to try to assume an orbit around the moon, a circular orbit, eventually you would slowly lose the orbit and fall onto the surface of the moon. That's because there are a lot of bumps in the gravitational well.
See, magnetism is gravity. I've been saying this right along. How do they not understand what they keep saying? It's amazing. Oh, we're cascading through all kind of solar particles and cosmic radiation, but there's nothing out there. And the same thing with light. Light goes from the sun to us and burns your face and creates electrons displacement inside of solar cells and all that. And they say, oh, nothing comes to us. It's just some kind of a non-existent wave. It is a particle.
It would be a good video for another day, but you can also check out Scott Manley's video that he recently made that explains this really well. And so what these missions discovered is that the far side right here has almost like a several kilometer thick extra layer of rocks that most likely came from this side right here. And all of this together kind of adds up to a very interesting story that may explain what really happened to the moon. And
let me just explain why the other side is so pockmarked and why it is excessively thick. It keeps collecting things on that side of the moon. The other side faces us. It's protected. We're not shooting rockets into the moon every day. The other side comes from and hits the other side of the moon. It's as simple as that. The side facing us is black and dark because it's not being bombarded by particles and chunks of things coming through.
And the simulations from the Macau University also add to the story, explaining exactly what may have occurred. So having run 360 simulations, they discovered that there's only maybe one or two that fit the scenario really well and created the moon that we see in our night skies.
All right, I'm just going to leave it there because whatever they came up with, trust me, it's not going to be right. They're not starting from the right place. They don't understand the magnetic fields. They don't understand the ether that's in space. They don't understand the spin of these planets and moons. The moon is not spinning. There's no magnetic field to speak of. That I mean, there's a magnetic field because it's still cascading through the electrons, just like us, but we're spinning and we have stripes. They don't have the stripes and it's not spinning. So what you're going to end up with is little magnetic anomalies here and there wherever there is metals, more than likely copper and iron and that sort of stuff. It interacts with the oncoming particles. Now, first of all, light can be accelerated. Light is a particle. And I can show neutrinos, and CERN says they can't even find them. That is a red laser light. That's all that is. And the reason that big wave-like thing is there is because there's a particle right in the center. You see this? Coming through there. But that particle possesses and influences a huge region around it, which was that big region we saw back here. So as it approaches the accelerator, which is nothing more than a venturi, it's two curved surfaces tuned to a certain distance in here, and that forces the particles to restrict into that space, concussing, and they have to accelerate. There's no option whatsoever. They must accelerate. Identical to an airplane wing, a propeller, it's acceleration. Light is nothing more than particles of, it's a liquid substance as far as I can determine. It does not, it's fluid like, it's a fluid, let's put it that way. It's not, I don't know how to say it any different than that. These are all the particles in space. They're all just floating around out there. They collect on you as static and they will discharge to ground. So don't tell me they're not there. They are there. You don't see them until you concuss them with some gigantic magnetic interaction. And you see what happened here? You see that reverse wave? That's because every bullet that hits there creates a huge reverse concussion. This is a pulse red laser. And they're shooting back magnetic waves. That's what's called reverse EMF, electromotive force. And you can see them. It's glowing backwards, going this way, and setting up all of these particles in this space to glow. Now, as it comes through the accelerator, it comes out with Higgs fields. Now, they say this is a boson particle. So this is Cherenkov radiation. Plasma, all right, and then Cherenkov radiation. Comes out of here white. But guess what? It'll turn back to red again. Now, why is that? I can tell you why. Because it is a certain size particle. That's all it is. Red is the small one. Green is the next one. And blue is the killer. That's the big smacker. All right. This one here will never displace electrons. It will crush itself and glow, but it will not displace electrons. Green will displace electrons, and blue will just smash them out of their way like a gigantic bowling ball. It's particle 1, particle 2, particle 3. That's all it is. Now, this is what they look like. They're back-to-back dipoles. There's an upspin and a downspin. And then you see those spikes coming on them. It seems to me that's inductive capacitance, where inductive capacitance, it's reactance to the induction and the capacitance. And the induction is in the vortex of the funnel portion of the torus, and the capacitance is in the bulbous part of the torus. So you have extreme glow, and then you have extreme unglow because it's in the capacitive area. Then you have a spiraling into the vortex area, which makes an extreme glow, and then it backs into the open area. So you get black and white, black and white, black and white. And it only shows up for two cycles after acceleration. This one right here shows the right-hand spin. This is blue laser, very bright. You can see the particle quite easily. And it's spinning to the right, which means it drifts to the left. And you can see it's compressing. It's wide here and it's crushing at the top. These are all different particles. And the one in the center is the one that came through the center of the accelerator. So that one there is obviously a little more energetic. Alright, this is my YouTube channel, Mud Fossil University, and it's free, there's no charge. Now up here, geologists are in for a shock. And they are in deeply for a deep shock. Because everything they have been saying is incorrect. Not a single word is right. This right here was right after the flood. They ground this up and took all the metals out. You see this? That is ground up. Now that's ground up flesh from the giants after the flood. They came down and mined the giant body parts, ground it up like a meat grinder, took out all the metals. This is the only piece of metal that was left, and this is my countertop, and there's a lot of counters, 32 feet, and that's the only piece I could find of metal, and every bit of it is ground up in extreme homogeneous. It's just homogeneous. That's not granite. That's not natural granite. That is ground up meat. And they were mining it soft. I can prove that too. I might as well show you that. Parte de Sempiata. And what you were looking right there is at tendon that was wet and a mining vehicle that had this interwoven treads on the side so it would not sink deep but could still drive, and was mining slabs of wet tendon to build walls. Alright, you saw the vehicle, you saw it sunk into this wet tendinous material, and that is a tendon, and it runs a very long distance, and these are the slabs they cut out, and this is where they placed them in the back. Alright, and this is an Achilles tendon. You see the texture of this? Inside of these straps, there is a bazillion tendon fibrils. You see that? Recognize these hex fibers coated with fascially, which is fascia. That means that they're separated from each other so they can slide independently, and that means that after you die, they still stay separated in the mud fossils. If you rot, it's a whole different story. These all were preserved because of salt water soaking and removing all the volatile, explosive organic chemistry out of these tissues when they were soaked. They became wet globs of preserved flesh. Bones became soft and invaded by the salts. Bones are protected in you from the salts. And when you die, that membrane breaks down and they become invaded. They turn into hydrocarbons. They are loaded with marrow and blood. And that becomes the hydrocarbons and methanes and bitumens and oils and gases. All right? So, this is just the way mud fossils form. And this is the nature of the mud fossil process, and it is strictly related to the saltwater preservation. And this is saltwater, soft tissue preservation is what it is. Alright, this is where they were putting those chunks of wet flesh, and guess what? They messed up on one of them. You see this one here? This is what it looks like magnified. You see that? That's blood, and I believe that's a bone. They took this whole roundish part here is either muscle or a bone that was attached to this part. I really can't tell at this point, but you can see it's eroded. Now there's still plenty of integrity, but that slip can come right off of there. This thing could come down. You see, she's getting ready to slide off of there. So anyway, and they use a lot of scraps here. I can see, look at this one up here. This is a mess. Alright, they just took whatever scraps they had left. This must be where the poor folk live. It always seems to be that way. Alright, so in that vein, I'm just going to leave it at this. I'm working with Greg Morrison. He's collecting dragon samples, literally, and I'm showing them. They're on my YouTube site, Mud Fossil University. Go up there, you can see them all you want. And I'm doing a series right now. I showed where he collected it from and the types of things he's taken them from. And I have the samples here. He collected them, sent them to me. And I'm showing them in a microscope, and we're looking at them, and we're talking about what happened and how this could have occurred. And then I am going to tell you something that is going to knock your socks right off of every toe on your foot. It done it to me, I can tell you that. When I came up with the thought, it just absolutely floored me, and it will you. And I will be talking about it. It relates to Atlas.